Welcome to ChurchMediaDesign.tv. I'm your host, Brad Zimmerman, and I'm so glad to have you here. And so is my faithful crew from a galaxy far, far away. We have Obi-Wan Kenobi, Darth Shroot, and Colonel Skywalker with his family 5-pack of Chewbacca chicken chews. And, of course, Jesus Christ, the Son of the Lord Most High. Well, this week we're going to be taking that Photoshop document of our growth graphic and bringing that into After Effects and giving a little motion to it. So if you guys are ready, and if my crew's ready, let's get into it. Well, this week we're going to jump inside After Effects and animate that growth graphic we made in the previous week. But before we get started, let's answer a viewer question. And this says, hey Brad, is there any starter you can do for After Effects, like things you can check off before you open After Effects, things you might want to know, or things AE can do for you? Is this something you've already done? I don't remember. And this is from JP. Well, JP, we really haven't done this. In the first episode, we did a countdown clock inside After Effects, but I didn't really explain After Effects too well, or at all. And so I want to do that just real quickly here. After Effects is a post-production program. It's meant for post-effects. It is not a video editing tool. It's not meant for going and cutting up video and figuring it all out. That's done in a program like Premiere or Final Cut. After Effects is meant for post-production, so like green screening, doing like post-effects and titling and like all of the funner stuff in my opinion, because that's the stuff I love to do. So that's what we use After Effects for. And the way that I was explained After Effects in school was as simple as this. After Effects is Photoshop in motion. Anything that you can do inside Photoshop, you can do inside After Effects over time. So we use all those keyframes like we talked about before, where we have Jesus here and then Jesus here, and the computer figures out the stuff in between. So we have those keyframes and figure that out. That's all After Effects is a bunch of different effects. So you can take, like this week we're going to be talking about that levels effect that we did in Photoshop, and we're going to be doing levels over time. And you'll be like, well, why would you want to do levels over time? That seems kind of odd, but you'll see how it actually is a very cool effect and very effective. So that's kind of a basic on what After Effects can do for you. And once you see After Effects as Photoshop in motion, it's not quite as intimidating because it's the same idea. You have layers and you apply effects to those layers, and there's blending modes between the layers, and so it makes a lot more sense than seeing it as a video editing tool, which it's not. So if you want to get After Effects, yet again, head over to the Academic Superstore or go to Adobe's website and download a free trial from there. So now let's get into the tutorial. So now before we jump inside After Effects, I want to show you the project we're going to be making today. And here's a video that I rendered out before. And as you'll see, the splatters kind of throw down and then growth kind of grows onto the page. So now we're going to go inside Photoshop and take a look at the document we created last week. Now you can download this document from the website if you want to animate the one that I'm working with, or just animate the one that you've already created this past week. Now if you look inside our layers palette here, you'll notice that I've gone through and I've gotten rid of all the layers we don't need, and I've renamed the layers what their name is, so that inside of After Effects we can easily see what each layer is supposed to be, because it's a little harder. You don't really get this little thumbnail preview like you do in Photoshop. So now let's, and I've saved this out as growth_AE because this is my After Effects version of my Photoshop document. So now let's jump inside After Effects and we're going to import that file. And we're going to do that by right-clicking inside our project area and going to import, or you can go up to File, down to Import, and then File. And we're going to grab growth_AE, and down here we're going to set our import as to composition. Now the difference between composition and footage is composition is actually a layered version of your file that you can actually animate all the layers, whereas footage is just one image. It's totally flattened and you really can't mess with the layers at all. So that's why we're going to use composition. So we're going to hit open, and now you'll see it's actually imported a composition and given us a folder with every single layer. So I'm just going to open up our Growth AE composition, and you'll see our Photoshop document, and it's sitting there. It's all in perfect order and everything's ready to go. Now, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and I'm going to shut off a few of these layers. So I'm just going to go down and I'm going to get down to our first light brown splat here. And as you saw in that video, our splatter kind of grew out of the background. And what we're going to use is we're going to use the levels to animate this. So now we're going to import this photo that's a texture. It's kind of this grungy image. We're going to actually apply the layers effect to that image, and that's going to actually help animate these paint splatters coming in. Now it sounds a little weird and it's a little hard to explain, so I'm just going to kind of show you what we're going to do here. So we're going to go right click, we're going to do import file, and we're going to grab this background texture. This is also available at the website. And we're going to bring this and we're going to throw this right above our light brown splatter. And we're going to just scale this down so it's about the same size as our splatter itself. So now that we have that in place, we're going to apply the layer or the levels effect to it. So we're going to right click and we can go down to color correction and then down to levels. And if we mess around with our levels, you can see that it's changing the brightness of this image. Now we're going to use what's called a track matte. And a track matte uses the luminance values of one image to set the transparency of the layer beneath it. So basically, if this image has a lot of bright areas in it, it's going to make the layer below that more transparent in just those bright areas. So this is why we're going to use this grungy texture, and this will help set the transparency and basically animate this coming in. It'll make sense after I get started. So just follow along here. So we're going to go and we're going to set our track matte of our light brown splat to Luma Matte Background Texture JPEG. And you can see it gets rid of the background JPEG, and if we click on that and we mess around with our levels, you can see that it's kind of messing with the transparency. And if we take our black level here and grow that down, you can see how it's starting to grow out. So we're going to set down our first keyframe by clicking on the histogram here, and then we're going to hit the letter U on our keyboard. And U just basically reveals all of the keyframes for that layer. And then we're going to zoom in here and go probably about 15 frames down our timeline, and we're going to set another histogram keyframe. And we're going to jump back to our first one, and I'm just going to set our gray value closer to our black and bring this all the way down. It makes it a little bit harsher when it's coming in since the gray is so close to the black. And now that's all the way there, and now if we scrub, you can see how it grows out. I'm actually going to set this down to like half quality so that it will render a little faster. And you can see how it's growing out. And so now let's just do that to all the other layers. So now jumping ahead to the future, I've done this to all three of the ink splatters, and I did the exact same steps. That I took that texture and I set it as a track matte, and then I animated the levels effect on that texture. So now we're just going to give it a little variation, and we'll go and move all the second one down to like the 5th keyframe, and the last teal one will move down to like the 10th keyframe, so they kind of gradually come in one after another. The other thing we're going to do is have them ease in. Now, easy ease keyframes are basically, there's linear motion and then there's eased motion, which is basically, if you remember in school, you had your graph and the line slowly got towards 0. All that basically means is instead of Jesus here moving the exact same speed across the table, he's going to start slow and then speed up. Or he'll start fast and then slow down at the very end. So that's all we're going to do here. So we're going to click and drag around these few keyframes here, and then we're going to do Control-Shift-F9, and that is easing your keyframes. The other way you can do that is go up to, or right click on these keyframes and do Keyframe Assistant, and you can do Easy Ease, Ease In, or Ease Out. And so all I did was ease out for those ones so that they start slow and then speed up into their final splat. Looks a little bit more realistic. So now we need to do this to our actual text. So for the growth title, we'll turn that one on, and just for the khaki white-ish colored layer, we're going to apply the same effect. So we're going to bring that background in, scale it down just like we did a minute ago. And we're going to rotate this so that it's about the same rotation as the word. And we want it to be about the same width as just the text, not the stripe itself. And we'll go and set on, let's say, frame 20, we'll set its first levels of keyframe. And again, we're going to go and set that it's a Luma mat. And hit the letter U so we can see our keyframes. And we'll go down, let's just do 10 frames here and set our secondary keyframe. And we'll bring this up so it's nice and bright. And then we'll go back to our first one and set our grunginess growing out. Now the cool thing that you can watch here is as it's growing out towards the end of those letters. We're going to use that to our advantage, and we're actually going to take it so as it's growing out towards the end there, then we're actually going to scale up this texture to reveal the rest of it. So as it goes out, it starts to get opaque, and then by the end there it is. So now we're going to add a scale keyframe to the texture layer. So the easiest way to do this is to hit Shift and S. And the S key for any layer sets the scale properties. P is for position, T is for transparency or opacity, R is for rotation. So we did Shift S, which just adds the scale property to any other keyframes that are currently seen. So we're going to set down a keyframe by clicking on the stopwatch and go down, let's say, 10 more frames, and we'll just scale up this layer until it's totally seen. So there we go with that. So now, as you can see, it grungily comes in and then starts to scale out. Now we're just going to do the same thing to our light and dark red layers. So let's turn the light red layer on, and we're actually going to do this with a mask. I've talked about masks before, but a mask basically makes an image seen or not seen wherever the mask is. So the easiest way to add a mask is to go up to Layer and down to Mask and New Mask, or you can do Control-Shift-N, which is the way that I normally do it. And we're going to hit the M key, and that's going to bring up our mask path. And we're going to set down a keyframe and then go down those 10 frames and set another. And we'll go back to the beginning here and we'll double click on the mask, and it will set a transformation for our mask. And we'll go through here and we'll just kind of scale it down until it's not seen, and we're actually going to rotate it just a little bit so that it is on the same angle. And then we'll go down to the end here and we'll match that rotation. Actually, it doesn't look too bad. So you can see that the red one's coming out kind of after the white one there, and I like how that looks. So now let's just do the same thing to our dark red. And so again, we're going to do that Control-Shift-N, and that sets a mask, and then we'll hit the M key, or we could have gone up to Layer and down to Mask and New Mask. So now we'll set a mask path keyframe, go out to our last frame there, and set our secondary one. And now we'll just do the same thing we did before, double click on our mask and scale it down here. And then we'll rotate it so that it's at the right angle, and maybe bring it out just a little bit more. And we kind of want this one to follow the other one, so we'll maybe start it a little bit after, because see how it kind of starts to catch up with it. We'll maybe just move this keyframe over one keyframe, and that'll help make it stay behind a little bit until the very end when it kind of catches up. So that's looking pretty good. And we can have that sit on there as long as we want. Maybe at the end we want it to reverse that. But that's basically all it is. And again, we're just using the levels to animate that, and we're using a track mat and using the luminance values, the brightness levels of that layer to show the transparency of a layer around it. So you've animated that, and so now you can just export that video out and you have an animation of your graphic coming on the screen. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that first glimpse into After Effects, and we're going to get into more detailed and harder things in the future, but I wanted to give us a nice, easy stepping stone into After Effects. Well, that was our first/second look inside After Effects, and I know that I'm not the greatest After Effects teachers, but there are two guys that I think do an outstanding job of teaching After Effects, and I've learned so much from them, and I really want to encourage you guys, if you're looking to learn more about After Effects, of a couple places to start. And the first place to start is creativecow.net. Now, Creative Cow is the creative communities of the world, but they have an amazing set of After Effects forums. So if you're having a problem that you don't understand or can't figure out, I would head over there first. That's the first place that I go. And Arwen Rabinowitz does a podcast on After Effects, and he does a great job laying out basics of different things like how to use shape layers in CS3, which was one of his newest ones, which was mind-boggling, the cool stuff you can do with shape layers, and I think you'll see some really neat stuff that incorporates that in the future coming out of producers. The other place to check out is videocopilot.net. And I know I've talked about them before, but they have some really cool stuff like this Evolution product that you can buy, which saved me tons of time. But also you can check out their After Effects basic training. And their basic training is a 10-part series on all of the basics of After Effects. Because Andrew goes through some more advanced effects when he does his tutorials that are totally free. And so he wanted to put out this series that got people at a starting place so they could watch his other tutorials and he didn't have to cover some of the basics. So he goes over everything from motion tracking to keying to expressions to just straight up animation to rendering. So if you don't know how to render the video that we made, you could head over here and check out his rendering section and learn how to render out the video. So I would check out videocopilot.net and creativecow.net. We want to thank our sponsors of worshiphousemedia.com, resources for the creative church. Head over to their website, check out some really great resources, pick up some background loops and some of the new title bumpers that Igniter's been putting out, as well as a lot of other great resources. So check out worshiphousemedia.com. Well, thanks for tuning in to another edition of Church Media Design. I'm so glad you could be here, and I really want to encourage you guys to spread the word. It's been really cool to have us mentioned in the magazine and on other podcasts, and I really want to encourage you guys to spread the word to friends and other coworkers on your staff that could maybe use this, and tell your mom and her church about it, or whoever could use this resource, because I have a heart desire to help churches be creative with what they have. So I just want to continue to spread the word about the show so that people can use media to create distraction-free worship environments. Now, the other thing you may have noticed is that the show is releasing at a new time on Monday mornings at 10 a.m. So after your long Sunday, you come in Monday morning and you can sit down and watch Church Media Design. So look forward to the show coming out at 10 a.m. on Mondays. The other thing, I got an email from Lucas Bishop who said, "Hey Brad, I don't know if you've noticed, but only the first episode of the show works on my video iPod." And I hooked up my iPod and I tried to transfer the newest episode, and he's right. None of the new episodes actually work on a video iPod. So I found the problem. There's a checkbox that we didn't have checked that allowed video iPods to see it. So we're fixing that. I'm going to slowly re-upload all the old episodes, but all of the new episodes for sure will work on your video iPods or any of the Apple products that need it that way. So I just wanted to let you know about that. But also head over to the website, grab the resources, grab the file from this week or last week, and there's links to all of the different things we've talked about as well as those resources. So head over there and check that stuff out, as well as send an email to me, Brad at ChurchMediaDesign.tv, or leave a comment on our message board. So as for me, the three wise men and Jesus, we're saying, see you later.